The sun was barely lifting over the horizon when Clara pushed open the screen door of the small ranch house, the smell of dust and cattle thick in the morning air. She was tired, her hands calloused from years of work that never seemed to bring stability, and her heart carried a loneliness that gnawed at her. Clara had drifted from town to town, taking odd jobs wherever she could find them. This time, she had been hired to cook breakfast for Henry, a quiet rancher who lived alone with his horses and fields. The first morning, she tied on her apron, stirred the eggs, and set the biscuits on the table. Yet beneath the routine of cooking, a desperation stirred inside her. She had always longed for connection, but she had often mistaken it for the fleeting approval of men. That morning, she tried to cross a line she thought would fill her emptiness. Henry, however, was not the kind of man to be swayed by such gestures. He looked her in the eyes, not with anger, but with something even harder to face, gentleness. He stepped back, his hands still, his voice steady. "Clara," he said, "I didn't bring you here for that. You're worth more than you think." His words stunned her. No one had ever spoken to her like that before, not as someone to be used or dismissed, but as someone who held dignity. Embarrassed, Clara turned away, muttering an apology, her face burning with shame. She expected him to fire her, to tell her to leave and never return. Instead, Henry simply sat at the table, picked up the fork, and said, "The food looks good. Let's eat." That moment, quiet as it seemed, planted something new in Clara. Still, her old instincts pulled at her. On the second morning, she tried again, searching for a response that might prove she was wanted. And again, Henry's reaction was steady, firm, but kind. "You don't need to earn your place here like that," he said. "I hired you to cook. But if you want more than a job, then let it come from the good inside you, not from fear you'll be left behind." Clara had no words. She had been seen through, stripped of her masks, and it hurt. Yet, for the first time, the hurt wasn't rejection, it was the ache of healing. By the third morning, something inside Clara broke. She sat at the kitchen table before cooking, her hands trembling. She confessed in halting words about the life she had lived, the foster homes, the men who had taken advantage of her hunger for love, the nights she had cried herself to sleep believing she was unworthy of anything pure. Tears spilled as she admitted she had never been treated as someone of value, never been told she was capable of more than survival. Henry listened, never interrupting, his weathered face softening with every word. When she finished, her shoulders slumped as if she expected the world to end. But Henry only leaned forward. "Clara, I can't change your past," he said. "But I can tell you this, you are not broken. You're stronger than you think. And sometimes, the world tests us not to show how weak we are, but to reveal how much strength we carry." He pushed a worn handkerchief across the table. It was such a simple act, but it felt like a rope pulling her from drowning waters. The days turned into weeks. Clara stopped trying to win affection the only way she knew and instead poured herself into cooking with care, tending the horses, and mending fences. She began to laugh again, her laughter rusty at first but then ringing true. Henry treated her as an equal, giving her responsibilities that showed his trust. Slowly, she began to believe what he had told her, that she was worth more. One evening, after a long day of work, Clara stood on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky with streaks of gold. For the first time, she didn't feel the gnawing emptiness inside her. Instead, she felt steady, as if the ground beneath her feet truly belonged to her. She realized Henry had never tried to rescue her, he had simply offered respect, patience, and space to rediscover her own strength. The true turning point came when another drifter passed through the ranch, a young boy of barely 16, hungry and scared. Clara saw herself in his eyes, the same desperate longing to belong. Without hesitation, she invited him in, fixed him a plate of food, and told him he was safe for the night. Henry watched from the doorway, a quiet smile on his face. Clara's act of compassion revealed how far she had come. She had transformed her pain into a gift for someone else. Clara's story was no longer about shame or mistakes. It was about redemption. It was about the power of kindness to rebuild what the world had tried to break. And as she watched the boy eat, she whispered to herself a truth she had never dared to believe. She was more than her past, more than her scars. She was a giver now, a light for someone else lost in the dark. In the stillness of that ranch house, surrounded by ordinary fields and endless skies, Clara discovered something extraordinary, that healing often begins not with grand gestures but with the quiet strength of compassion. And in that discovery, she found hope, not just for herself, but for anyone who had ever felt unworthy of love.